And let's do some branding. Like that. There you go.
Yeah.
Hello.
Sizzle.
Sizzle? What the heck are you on about?
You know, it kind of like animates across the screen.
Oh, yeah. We see if like Winnie can make us like something super flashy like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the Hub Games TV network, that sort of thing.
Just show her the dice tower and go, make it like that, but us.
But good. Sorry, that's me going to get punched in the nose by Tom next time I see him.
Hey, us.
Welcome, Yas. Welcome. Hello. Oh, how was the dice tower thing earlier, by the way?
Yeah, actually, I was just about to say, whilst I kind of loosen up, I was really worried because I was like, I don't think they hadn't played the game before. So they were kind of playing it for the first time. And they actually did pretty well. You know, there's a few questions things they were kind of making assumptions about, which I had to kind of clarify, but surprisingly few.
I mean, it's not bad for the dice tower.
For the dice tower, yeah. Considering they were like, yeah, let's just give all this training stuff and jump in, and sure, let's give our heroes powers as well. And it's like, you can't handle the power. So, because that obviously brings up questions about certain cards that if you've been playing it normally, it becomes much easier to interpret the powers. That's how they're designed. So they jump straight in.
That's right. Say we haven't actually done hellos yet or anything. We're just chatting about shite as usual.
So, it was. They had about 300 people watching it.
Okay, that's good.
So, which is pretty good.
It's good times. Mm-hmm. Folks who are here, welcome. Hi, Matt.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome all.
So, I'm expecting. This is one of those chats where I'm expecting to learn a lot from the people who are watching. That's my objective. You have to teach me about good, interesting house rules and variants for games.
Okay. I don't really know what to expect from this. But hey, every show is an adventure. Every episode a roller coaster of emotion. It'll be intriguing, I guess.
Let's see if I can make it like pull it down and make it deep and personal at some point, even though it's just about house ruling. What does it mean? What does it mean to house rule?
Oh no! I can make it personal from minute one. Don't worry about that because by sad, lonely childhood. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we'll see how it is.
Well, when I was younger and I had no one to play with.
Basically.
My first house rule.
Yep. Sad life.
So I'm just looking at Matt is saying he not sure how useful I'll be. I rarely have ever house rule I'm playing. Well, that's going to be, I think, part of the conversation. Like,
for sure.
Do you house rule? If not, why not? If you do, why? Because I was saying to Michael just before he came on, I would have had a particular view, and it's kind of changed, I think, over time. As I see, I think both sides of the curtain, being the player and being the designer. And seeing the kind of benefits of both ways.
I got some deliveries today. Would you like to see them?
Is it gonna make me sad and jealous?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, one of them will make you go, "Yeah, I figured," which is this one.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's an interesting box first.
Yeah, so this is the new version. So you've got the older one, yeah? The sort of like long green box version?
Yes, just out of reach over there.
So it's a really good game. And my mum sent us some money for Christmas and said, I don't know what to get you for Christmas. Go buy yourself something yourself. And I went, all right, copy of Jaipur it is then. Ooh,
nice.
Yeah, that was all good. I'm super excited about that. All I need now is people to play against. Which, hey, considering what life is like in our local area, maybe sometime in mid 2022. We'll see. But this, I think you'll dig, and I guess you're going to try and want to borrow this at some point. I got a copy of Delve.
Ooh, nice.
All right. So, solo map drawing game where you are basically building a dwarven dungeon by sort of like using the actually really well put together rule set that's in here, but flipping cards from a like a standard playing card deck, and spending resources that you gain and lose, and going up against enemies and stuff like that. It's really, really interesting. It's like a 48-page like little zine, and it was like tenner. Anna Blackwell, who designed it, has it on her site, and I've been following it for a while. I'm actually on her Discord as well, and there's a really sort of like good, interesting community of people who are who have been testing it, and now that it's actually finally printed up and everything, I wanted to get a physical copy. So that is Anna Blackwell. There you go, Yoss, just for you.
I have printed out, so that's been on my radar because there was a thread on BGG that was about kind of solo dungeon crawlers, like kind of draw and write dungeon crawlers, and there's one called 3 Dice Dungeon, which looks really interesting because it's just really minimalist, and it's the kind of game you can kind of sit down and crack out quite quickly. But it's interesting. The combat is like you've 3 different stats, and when you're rolling dice, each one is being diminished, so you're having to kind of switch between stats. And if all 3 get knocked out when you're fighting against creatures, you lose a game and you reset. But it's just really, it's based on, I think there was a solo competition, and this person took it and just added a little bit more interesting choices to the game.
Nice. That's cool. Oh, Yoss has spotted that there's 2 other books in the series. Umbra is the space version of it, which is pretty cool. But I wanted to go for the original. Ken's mentioned called Against Darkness.
I have played that, and I actually don't massively remember it. I have it on the shelf.
What is it?
So it's a kind of draw and write dungeon crawler. As you're moving through, you have a party of 4, and you have to kind of choose their marching order, which will determine certain things. It's Ken, I don't know if I'd call it an RPG. Like, it's, from my perspective, there's no real character decisions in it. It's like, it's that real traditional dungeon crawl where you're just moving through and hacking and slashing stuff as you go, but you're generating the dungeon.
Like a stats manager sort of thing, or?
If bear with me, keep everyone busy. I'll be back in a second. Hang on.
So Ken says it doesn't have a story. That's why I like it. So Ken, is it a bit like Darkest Dungeon? I guess that kind of vibe where you're just progressing through, and you have to get from a start point to an end point. We'll see. Yeah, all Michael time, the worst time for all of y'all. Which, I can only apologize. It's back. Shh.
So it's this one here.
Oh, okay.
So it is. So the description is: For Against Darkness is a solitaire-friendly dungeon delving game. So it's a dungeon delving game that may also be played cooperatively. No miniatures needed. All you need is the book, a pencil, 2 dice, and grid paper. Choose 4 characters from a list of classic types. Equip them and venture into dungeons created by dice rolls and your own choices. You'll fight monsters, manage resources, grab treasure, dodge traps, find clues, and even accept quests from the monsters themselves. Your characters will level up, become more powerful with each game, if they survive.
Interesting.
So,
how big's that book? That's what, an A4 book? How many pages?
So it's just roughly A5, and it is 90 pages.
Okay. So that's a bit more in depth than this, but I think in Delve you're not actually. You don't have characters in Delve. It's just sort of like you are this omnipotent dungeon creator, and you're making cool stuff. Grab
my notebook where I have a dungeon in it. Hang on a sec, so I can show it.
Go for it. Cool, because I also have previously, actually, before I started doing streaming properly, I have.
Okay,
He's
so
back.
I don't think I got very far actually.
Oh,
So I am
God,
gonna have to go back and play this. So this is like my setup for the 4 characters. Just basic stats and information for each one. I've got my name, level,
That's really
clues that they
in-depth,
have.
to be honest.
Hmm?
That's pretty in depth.
And then it's the map is being generated as you go.
Okay.
Murder hobos.
Murder hobos. My favorite kind of adventuring.
Yeah.
So
this
stuff
one
like
actually I really like.
Roll dice, and this is how many squares up this corridor is, that sort of thing. And
yeah, so
but
I think
90 pages worth.
Yeah, so there's basically like you're rolling a D100, and it's giving you. No, sorry, 2d6. And you're basically generating the dungeon and the characters. Kind of while we're on the subject, this one is pretty neat actually, and this is Pencils and Powers, which I printed out as a like small double-sided sheet. But essentially, you're moving through the dungeon, and you have an objective where you've got to get to certain rooms and kind of get treasures out of them. There's going to be monsters you meet along the way, and you've basically take down the different monsters as you go and you encounter them. And so when you're rolling the d6, it's telling you how you can move through the dungeon. So I'm doing this all backwards. So you're basically trying to use these pathways to get to the different. This is so hard. Get to the different locations. So it's really interesting.
It looks like a specific door on each room as well. So
yeah,
yike.
But again, it's nice that it's kind of 4 double-sided pages. So it's kind of like a nice one to sit down and play. I'm gonna have to play these again now, especially for Against Darkness. I think I have to. I realize something probably got in the way of me playing it at the time, so I'll have to go back and revisit that. And there is an expansion, like a kind of campaign for it as well that you can get.
That's cool. Like I'm actually going to do delve on. I'm going to do like a Friday night stream. So Friday night will be about playing something live on camera, so like an actual physical thing, and then Saturdays is going to be like Steam as normal. So delve I'm going to do on Friday night, and I'm really looking forward to it because remember ages ago I did, before I started like streaming properly, I did a solo play of the Quiet Year.
Yes,
and I really liked the sort of like the story that sort of came from that. So maybe this is like the solo gaming thing that I like. It's like a creative solo gaming thing, and you've got something left over, something in front of you to give it a shot.
I'll have to give you a loan of. This is like the dungeon crawling section.
Rory's dungeon crawling shelf.
This is kind of interesting because it can be co-op, but also solo. And what's really interesting about this is the kind of organic way in which you lay out the cards. So each, if we're talking, cards have like an entrance and an exit. So as you lay them out, right. So you've got cards like this.
Okay.
You know, and they have different what are entrance and exit areas, and the kind of the light coming from them. But you can basically play the cards. When you play them down, you can orient them whatever way you want. So it kind of gives you a much more organic feel for it. And again, it's like all the cards have to be placed legally. I've played this a handful of times, but it's kind of, I keep eyeing this one to go back and play a little bit more to get into it.
That sounds cool. That's right. Ken has a review copy of Delve to go through as well. Actually, yeah, that post where Anna said, "Hey, anybody want to review Delve?" was the thing that reminded me that the physical version was out. So I just went, "Yoink! Here is my money, please. Thank you very much." That's all good. So yeah, that is cool. I have no more shopping. I mean, we got a milk frother. I mean, I can go downstairs and get that if you want, but
Nice.
Thrilling and exciting.
Well, our news is our first family COVID test. Yay!
High five, baby! You done it.
So just after my eldest daughter coming out of her 10-day self-isolation because of someone in her class, she was like, "Yeah, I can go meet my friends," and then suddenly was like, "I can't do it because my sister has to get a test." But hopefully, we'll be okay.
Roll the one on that one.
Mm-hmm. I'm noticing my stream is breaking up a little bit, so I might try and change signals. So if I disappear, that is the reason.
If he goes, I'll take over, which will delight some and horrify others. The milk frother is indeed great for mixing cards, just into tiny little bits of awfulness. So that'd be cool. Trying to think what else I did today. I made sausage rolls today. That was exciting.
Nice. How did they turn out?
Really good. I'm not just sort of like blowing my own trumpet. It's like sausage, parmesan, garlic, a lot of pepper, and onion, puff pastry, and it was like, yeah, you've done well here, Michael. You've done well.
Hang on. Let me just reach over and pat you on the head. Hang on.
Hang on. No, it needs to come from the other side.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that vaguely worked.
We can go on tour with this.
Yeah, this is how we're going to make our billions now.
See, look, just like the silence in the crowd.
I mean, the sausage rolls went down well, so that's good. The amazing physicality and
the dexterity that was involved in that.
That's some high quality dexterity there. Yeah. And what do we get? Nothing. Absolute sadness. I mean, there is now officially a thumbs up, which I'm assuming is from just that high quality bit of head tapping. That's all good. You don't have to go on tour. You can broadcast from where you are. See, this is it. We just disappointed everybody because next time Yoss expects fireworks. Well, that'll be
wait.
Yeah.
Tune in next week. We might have them.
No. Sorry. Yeah, Roy, are you okay with me letting off fireworks in this room?
Yeah, little tiny ones.
Oh, like the crappy indoor ones that smell very bad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Shall we, my friend, get into this extravaganza?
Yes.
Proper. So I'm going to do this.
What you gonna do? It's like sleight of hand, Michael. You'd hardly even notice.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I'd have just clicked that thing. Nobody would have freaking noticed anyway. So it's all good. Yeah, mate. Lots of scratching dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows what that means. Probably people who watch my stream. All right. So part 2 of our discussion from last week, with this one having to focus upon house rules. Why, Rory? Why this topic?
Why not, Michael? So when the whole thing spun out of like last week when I was creating the models for the scatter terrain for Test of Honor, and the idea of like customizing game experiences tied in with the mental health benefits of kind of crafting. And when we were talking about it, we kind of went, there's probably enough to talk about 2 different topics. One about the like physical customization of games, and the other being the kind of rule customization of it. And I think, like you're right, there's enough to talk about in terms of, I guess, like the function, like talking about a game, like what we expect when we're buying the game. Should we kind of customize it or not, and what are some of the main reasons for wanting to customize a game, and then maybe chatting about some of the ways we've both done it with games, or certain customization, kind of rule hacks that we use. And then hopefully, people in chat will point out some of the hacks they've used on games that have kind of improved them from their perspective as well.
So you mentioned at the very sort of like top of the episode, Rory, you have come from one point of view and shifted into another. So what was your sort of like initial point of view, I guess? What was the...
Well, I think...
Were you the purist?
I think, largely speaking, I would say yes. Like that I would have come from the perspective of play the game as it's presented, because it's the designer's job to make a game that works. And that's so, and I'll come back to that. So yeah, so I think originally it's like, don't be in a hurry to change the game. Like play it the way it's intended by the designer, because they're meant to have done their job to make the playable game. I think that view has changed a lot with Kickstarters, mostly, where that the designers haven't actually done the work. I feel in certain games where I'm like, you're giving me a game that like I can spot flaws in this, like, and I'm not the greatest math head, but I kind of go, there's stuff going wrong here. And so I've either changed things, or largely speaking, other people in the design community have jumped in. So I think that's kind of one of the perspectives. I think being interested in solo games, that's obviously where I probably started first, because it was, in order to play games, people have had to write solo rules for it. So I would have kind of got into customizing game rules that way. And then there's also just, I think some games have a strong community that encourage additional development, like Marvel Champions being a great example, where people are coming up with kind of fan decks based off different characters. Again, Test of Honor, where it's there's enough of an open space for you to be able to do it, and it's not really going to break the game too much as well. So
I think Marvel Champions, I've seen like there's a whole like series of like DC Comics decks and things as well, which is interesting. Now Ken does bring up a point. Is that house rules or is that fan created content?
So that's technically fan created content in that case, but there's also, so I'll maybe start with Marvel Champions, and I haven't tried the rule yet, but it addresses, I think, an issue I've seen with the game. So Marvel Champions, when you're playing it, the villain has a certain amount of hit points, and you need to remove all them to win the game, and it's always that's the win condition.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people have come to the point where they're like, it's a bit too predictable. It's like, I know at the beginning of the round, I've got enough hits to take out that character, and I'm going to do it. And it kind of, that last round becomes a little bit mechanical. So aside from wanting a bit more variety in how a scenario kind of a game plays out, where it's not always about defeating the villain, in that case, people have suggested ways of, like when you attack someone, you flip over an encounter card, and based on the number of kind of boost icons on it, they recover that much health at the end. So they're always kind of like still standing, and you have to kind of get in that one more hit. And I think that's a kind of, I guess, a house rule that adds a little bit more uncertainty to the game, where you can't guarantee, this is the hit that's going to take them out. So that's kind of one in Marvel Champions that I'm looking at incorporating, and I just haven't played it because I read it after I had decided I'm going to wait until Christmas to play Ant-Man and Kang. So I'm going to treat it like I'm getting it for Christmas. So I am
still massively delighted by that Ant-Man card. It's absolute genius. I'm so impressed by it. So with regard to house ruling stuff for me, I have mentioned this on the show previously, but I've been doing it since I was a kid. Because, I lived on the complete opposite side of London to where my school was, and I lived in a pub which was basically a giant fortress. And
Was it like EastEnders?
A little bit.
The Queen Vic?
Less sort of slapping. Less sort of, Pat and what's her name? Barbara Windsor, who played Peggy.
Who passed away this week.
She did, yeah. But yeah, lots of like slaps, like you can, loads of that. But I basically had my own sort of like giant room upstairs, which was filled with boxes. Yeah, those are downstairs, Roy.
I know.
Although it was a bit weird seeing an 8-year-old going to change the barrel. So yeah, I just had like loads and loads of these sort of like big cardboard boxes with lots of like my favorite video games that had been house ruled into weird roll-in moves. So each box was its own one.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically like made a roll-in move version of Pac-Man and a roll-in move version of Defender, and it was like Michael's Miniature Arcade, which was like sort of slightly tragic, but it was definitely like, okay, I want to play something. I do not have an endless supply of 10p pieces, and Dad won't give me the key so I can actually go and play the arcade downstairs. So I have to go and do this myself. So yeah, I just came up with a whole bunch of sort of like weird ways of playing it then. And then when I got stuff like we mentioned Hero Quest as well, and I had nobody to play it with because my brother was like 5 years younger than me, and the only thing he wanted to do was like eat the side of the board. So I would just go, all right, well, screw it, I'll make my own rules and I'll play against myself. And now I'm sort of like, a certain period of years later, and it's like I'm still farting around trying to change rules in games to make things work better. So yeah, it's an adventure, and it always has been.
So have you got an example of, well, I'll ask in the chat first. So for the chat, how many people actively kind of like house rule games and how many don't? My impression is both Ken and Matt do not do it. But I'm wondering if any of them do it.
I mean, I'll while people sort of like throwing examples out, I will. Yoss is like the Dutch version of me, but slightly younger. Made my own rules for Dark World. The miniatures were great, but the game was shit. Dark World was so weird. We'll talk about that later. We should do an episode about like 80s plastic games and like reminiscence and stuff. Scott very vehemently does not house rule. It has been decreed.
But Scott, you're actively involved in the development of, and this is where my brain draws a blank. The Western card game. Doomtown. So I think sometimes when you're spending a lot of time on development, like I think that's the thing for me. If I'm spending a lot of time developing a game, I want to be told how to play the game. I don't want to have to hack it. And sometimes there is a frustration that if you feel like, well, I need to do this to get the game to work. I think most of those games would end up going back up on a shelf.
We got it right. Yay. Sorry. So Ken says that his house ruled some games of Betrayal at House on the Hill because you're trying to play every haunt. I mean, true. Yeah. Sometimes you just want to do something that you can't get access to. Jay is currently toying with making a solo version of 13 Days, but otherwise I'm too lazy. So yeah, that's cool. That's good.
There's a weird thing with video games. I would always have played on normal mode until I read an article about easy mode and going, well, if you just want to experience the game, which is generally what I want to do, why not play on easy mode? It's not cheating, which was what I always felt it was like. And I think that's where I've kind of come to a little bit with board games. So in Blackstone Fortress, you complete these quests, and then when you get to like a stronghold, you essentially have to play a full game before you get to the stronghold. And the games can be playing solo. The games can be quite brutal because your head is trying to control 4 characters and navigate it all. And I just saw someone had posted, yeah, just skip it. And I thought, and I was like, actually, yeah, I want to experience the game. I don't want to if I keep dying on that bit to try and get to the stronghold, I'm like, I'm just gonna get fed up, and like, I haven't started that quest yet because I thought, oh, it's gonna be too epic. So that's one of those things where it's like, screw it, it's like the balance between playing it right the way it's designed and playing it in a way that you're going to have fun with it and enjoy it. And I think if the rules are taking you away from having fun with it, that's when it's like time to house rule something. Because if you enjoy most of the game, but there's something that's getting in the way of it, the design, like, we know designers don't always get it right, and when it hits a wider audience, they will sometimes see things that you didn't see or have experiences that can help feed into the game. So that's where I think I've shifted more. Like, designers aren't infallible, so house ruling is fine. I think once you at least give the game a try the way it's intended. It's people who jump in and who read a rule book and go, "Oh, I'm going to house rule this." It's like, no, you haven't even seen the bits moving together. Like, do that, and then if it still isn't working, then maybe consider house ruling.
Yeah, I mean, I actually mentioned that this morning on my own channel, where it was like, I would always ask that somebody, like, if you're going to play a game, play it by the rules or as close to your understanding of the rules as possible. Because, however you interpret the rules by the designer, that's how the game should be played. And hopefully the rules will be well written enough that you will interpret them correctly and you will get the experience that the designer wants you to have. But then you have somebody going up to someone like Elizabeth Hargrave and saying, I have house ruled your game for you. Please thank me and please bow down before me. And then she comes back and says, how many times did you play it? And they said, I haven't played it, but I've fixed your game. And there is not a jury in the land, Rory, a jury in the land that would convict that woman for that murder. I think it would be entirely okay. Because we've had it as well. Like, I've had people come up to me about Megacity and say, no, this game is broken. Like, what happens if you're playing, what happens if the person you're playing with decides to knock over the table? And my answer was always, don't fucking play with them, because they're just dickheads. Don't let them ruin your game. Yeah.
We'll bleep those bits out after.
No, we won't. We're allowed one each.
Okay.
It's all
gotta save mine up.
So Saint says, I have several fixes for your games, Michael. Mega City needs a hot glue gun. Ken says family channel. Whatever. We're all family. Irish families swear at each other a lot.
It's a sign of affection.
It's true. So Saint has actually made Ultima cards for Teo. Okay, I can never say this right. Teo Tuhagan. So if you play 2 or 3 player, the non-used player dice don't sit for an entire epoch on the same spaces. We hated that bit and never have 4 players. We name the Ultima card decks and get mad at them more when they block us. Nice. That's really cool, actually. Because I've only played Tier 2 account a couple of times, and it was under the 4-player count. So, yeah, just having the same spots blocked out all the time it's an annoyance. But I think having something like that is a good idea. And actually, I think the whole Ultima cards thing sprung from people wanting solo variants of games, and then sort of like it became a much more sort of official thing, because it's got the little logo and everything now, which is you see it in a lot of games, and lots of different companies have sort of taken on the idea of doing Ultima cards, which is a lovely way of extending the play reach of your game. So yeah, it's cool. Let's see. So because it says we played a few times with the real rules first. We got the strategic difference, but it didn't spark fun. Yeah, and fun's what you want, like you said, Rory. It's important.
So I think house ruling. So I'm looking at something here for Myth, which to me I think is really interesting because it speeds the setup time of the game, which to me is also like a key factor. So in Myth, the way the game was originally designed was that you had different kind of creature types. So you had like crawlers who were like these kind of insectoid creatures. You had the grubbers who are like the goblin type creatures, and they had their own darkness deck. So as you play the game, you take actions. As your actions increase the darkness level. When the darkness level hits 6, the darkness triggers, interrupts the flow of the game. You reveal a card from that creature's deck, and it tells you how essentially the AI of the creatures are going to respond. So it meant there was a different deck for each creature set. And
how many different creature sets are there?
Lots. And they also hadn't published some of them because of the Kickstarter content.
Fun.
So Grimzim, who is on BGG and kind of Facebook, he developed a kind of a universal darkness deck. So what he did was it's really, really neat. And he's done incredible work with Myth, which is kind of like both part kind of fan content, but actually it's more like fixing the game. And because it was designed as so bit of background with Myth, it was originally conceived as like standalone, essentially dungeon crawler sessions where you're heroes and you're remembering an adventure you had.
Okay.
When it started on Kickstarter, fans were like, "Oh my god, has this got a campaign?" And it never was meant to have a campaign in it. It was never meant to have leveling up of characters. It was meant to be like standalone games. But the designers said, "Yeah, sure," and tried to work out a kind of campaign system.
Yeah, of course it does.
Well, that's kind of like they kind of should have said, "No, this is it," like Hero Quest, and kept it like that. But they didn't, and it ended up creating a whole load of problems for the game and the game mechanics, which I don't think they had kind of fully anticipated, like the interactions, especially when you're creating like a whole load of, that's that example of throwing in a whole load of content with it not all. I can't believe it was all fully play tested before it was pushed out to the degree that it needed to be. So what Grimson did was he created essentially a kind of reference card for each creature type that's in it. So that's like the tribal one, and these are just printed off. The unholy, which are like skeletons, and the rodents. And so you can see there's a number there with a certain action that triggers on that. And then he creates like a universal deck based on the difficulty of the creature that you're playing against. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. So now when the darkness triggers, you would just reveal one of those cards and resolve that. And it instead of having separate decks with each one kind of having the flavor on the creature on it, basically these specific elements are what introduce the flavor of the creatures into it by giving them a reaction based on that card. So it's like a really tidy way of doing it, because now when new creatures get released, you just need a new reference card for that creature.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and it makes
how did the game like creators take that, like this streamlining, they would say, improvement of their original vision?
They're kind of out of the picture, so they actually ended up selling the IP for Myth to Ulysses Spiel in Germany, and they've taken over the development, and they're coming up with essentially a new version of Myth that's going to be coming to Kickstarter. So there's no one really to give feedback on it, but it's one of those things where I would actually be quite happy to just keep playing Myth based on the content that Grimzim has done. Like he basically reworked a lot of the characters. So he played it a ton with his group and said, yeah, this kind of archer doesn't really behave the way an archer should behave, and tweaked the game to add in a bit more flavor for those characters, because there was ones that were obvious favorites and ones that had been probably tested more. So he's essentially fixed a lot of the holes that appear in Myth, and I always play with his stuff now rather than the base content.
I mean, it'd be interesting if the folks who have picked it up at Ulysses sort of essentially wrapped that better streamlined version into the new version of the game, because it's always interesting when house rules or or the unofficial rules have been picked up by the people back at head office and go, do you know what? Yeah, this is better. This is the way to do it. It's like I always wish. I don't know if they've actually done it yet, but one of my favorite house rules, just to speed things up, is in Carcassonne. So normally in the game, at the end of your turn, you pick up a tile, and it's like, okay, fine, that's grand. But normally at the start of the turn, you pick up your tile. So many people just said, well, why don't you just pick up your tile at the end of your turn? Because then that gives you the entire duration of the round till it comes back around to you again for you to decide where you want to go. So it'll speed things up. And it doesn't, it's not a massive speed up. You're only going to save yourself a few seconds every time turn comes around to you. But it keeps the flow going so much nicer. And I'm pretty sure that they managed to roll that into the official rules. I think they just rewrote it. Yeah, relatively recently, a few years ago.
I think when I got back into gaming around 2006, 2004, 2006, that was, I think, one of the first house rules I introduced into the game.
It just makes sense. And it doesn't affect anything badly. It's just...
Yeah. And we actually, that was one of the rules we switched in Flip Over Frog. The rules were draw a card, draw a tile and play a tile, and we switched it to play a tile and draw a tile to speed up the gameplay.
Yeah, because we're intelligent people. We know how things should go. That's a good. Ken mentions tapestry ? In the chat.
Well, he says he starts with, and I don't know enough to respond to this. Who says that games need to be play tested? Tapestry, anyone? Are you implying it's not been sufficiently play tested?
A couple of people might be you're going to get the wrath of the Stonemaier hordes on your back.
Well, just as well, none of them are probably on our channel. One of the things, this is kind of like a generic thing to do with dice-based combat in games, and I think this is the ones where I think I'm going to start house ruling more games in this manner. So, like with a lot of kind of Games Workshop, it's like rolling tons of dice. And if you want to increase the chances of you hitting something, you roll more dice. It's generally the factor. But it can be really, really swingy to the point, like I don't mind some swinginess, and you want that like, oh, am I going to hit and what's going to happen? I think I was playing God Tier the other night and I was playing it solo. And one of the things that I was seeing happen that was just getting really kind of frustrating was you roll to hit, right? And then they're rolling to kind of, so you're trying to get past their dodge skill, right? So you succeed in getting past their dodge and you land a hit, and then you roll for damage and you have to beat their armor. And it might be that
double check.
Yes. And this is like a norm in a lot of Games Workshop stuff as well. So you're rolling twice to see if you hit. And then so you might have hit them, but then you do no damage because you're rolling the dice to get over an armor level. And I was kind of like, actually, I want to start trying where you set a base value of damage and you modify off of that base point. So it's like, yeah, the chances are you're going to do 1 point of damage, but you roll the dice to see whether you're going to do more of that or less of that, or like something, because it's fine once or twice in the game. But if you happen to have, and I'm trying to think like Monster Apocalypse as well, it's one of those things. If you keep having your run of it, the joy of the game just starts to drain at that point. Whereas at least if you know every action is at least chipping away, it stops you from kind of feeling like, yeah, what's the point? So because I like dice rolling and I don't want to go, all the way over to well, you just do this amount of damage.
Uh-huh.
And I know Gloomhaven is kind of doing it with. I think it does do it that way actually, where you have a base damage and then you flip a card and it modifies it.
Uh-huh.
But I thought it might be an interesting thing to experiment with if you guaranteed like a 1 point and then you roll other dice to see whether it's modified or not.
Yeah, I can imagine that there would be little more frustrating in a game than you constantly managing to, get past some, you manage to get past their, I'm going to stab you. And like, you duck over and and then all of a sudden it's just like, patang, all right, it bounces off their armor. And like it happens twice, 3 times, 4th time. It's just like,
you just want to like throw your shield at them.
Just like, go away! Just hurling stuff across the battlefield. But yeah, because it's one thing that we did a lot over the course of actually pretty much all of the games that we work on is we try and put things into. We have a vague sense of reality as much as possible. So things need to make sense to us. So in my world, in that world of like the fighting, if somebody is like, say for example, you and I are having a fight and we are super awesome knights and we have swords and shields. If I whack you across the head, if I manage to get past your shield and I just club you on the top of the head with the hilt of my sword, it's gonna hurt you. Yeah, the armor's gonna protect you, but it's still it's still gonna do something to you. So you want the satisfaction of actually knowing that I've done something. And I think that base 1 damage is a good way to go, and then modify it off of that. I think that's a good call for sure.
Thanks, Michael. I've got your blessing. I can go do it now. See you all. Bye.
Papa Emeritus Michael is here.
Exit that way.
All right. So Ken has returned, and this is the problem with Tapestry. Tapestry had a post-release balance update. Nobody does those. What are you talking about? Which includes factions getting 15 victory points per opponent before the game starts, or losing 15 victory points at the start. So in a 3-player game, the scores before anyone does anything could be -15, 0, and 30. Okay. That sounds a bit weird. There are other modifications as well. Okay. Strange.
So even the mighty are fallible. And Zayt as well as saying they house ruled Scythe in the 2-player version by adding 2 stars to lengthen the game. Oh, because does it run quite short then as a 2-player?
It's super quick. So I've got my little Scythe as well. You've got my little Scythe as well. So
I do, yes.
Over on your shelf over there. 2-player game of that rattles past in like no time at all. So if you want to actually get a little bit more into it, adding a couple of extra achievements to trying to reach it, just it makes it feel a bit more substantial, I guess. That's actually a really, really good call. What is the worst house rule in the history of board games?
My mind immediately goes to Monopoly. Am I on the right path?
You are.
And the collecting money when you pass go? Is that the one?
No, that's an actual rule.
Okay. Well, that's so long since I've played.
Opposite side of the board. Literally direct opposite side of the board.
Community chest?
No, those are random spots on different locations.
Jail?
No, that's...
No, I can't remember. That's so long since I've played.
Free parking. Money on free parking. So the money is, I have to pay luxury tax, and then putting it in the middle. If somebody lands on free parking, then they get all the money, which of course is not how the game is supposed to be played. Jos knew what I was on about. Ken knew what I was on about. Monopoly is a fine game when you play the game by the rules that are in the box. The problem is things have been passed down from generation to generation. I describe playing Monopoly like a verbal tradition that's passed down. Like no one has actually read the rules Yeah.
Like they could probably stop putting the rules in Monopoly because no one reads them. They're just like, oh no, I heard it from my cousin who heard it from their neighbor who played it with their great aunt, and this is how you play.
Yeah. And if I'm like, not going to pay any attention to somebody who's telling me that, the COVID vaccine has, microchips in it to track me halfway around the planet, I'm definitely not going to pay any attention to somebody who is telling me to play a board game, which is way more serious, in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
So, my friends, A, when you play Monopoly, play it by the damn rules. But B, have I got something for you right here? So this is from 2010, and it's called the Board Game Remix Kit. They kickstarted it, like, obviously back in the day. And it is a bunch of folks. It's Kevin Davis, Alex Fleetwood, Holly Gramazio, and a certain Mr. James Wallace, who several people of this parish may well be aware of. But basically, it takes classic board games and house rules the crap out of them into completely new and different things. So this was what inspired my stream this morning, where I was playing Blabrex against all of the lovely good folks, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I went digging around in my game boxes to try and find this, and was just delighted by the fact that everything. So they did it in a little book, but they also did it in this fancy version where each game comes on a different sheet. So this is. They have like different versions of Monopoly. They have like a poker variant with lots of scope for wild betting using Monopoly bits, which is called Full Houses. And it's like, that's really cool. A storytelling game using Monopoly bits, a solo city building game, which is cool. Then there's a few different Scrabble variants, which is really, really good. There's Cluedo, Trivial Pursuit. And then I was like, oh man, but it's been so long since it was out. It was, long time ago that was done. And I found out that they actually reissued it earlier this year because of the COVID stuff. And voila, my friends. If you go over to this beautiful page, it has all of the rules and everything is downloadable for free.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like taking those classic mainstream games and giving you, whole complete new ways to play it. What's really nice as well, there are actually extra games in there as well. And I really want to try Zombie Mansion, which is where you get to use the weapons to defend the Cluedo mansion.
Oh, brilliant.
I'm entirely here for it. So I'm just going to grab the thing for that, and I will put it all in the chat like that, so you all can go and check that one out. So yeah. On the subject of the game of Blabrex that we played this morning, because I enjoyed it. That game was so much fun. Felt like a right deeker after playing, and I'm sure you all coach. Now, the thing is, I will also go back over to here because Ken was super useful, and actually he didn't screen grab the original game. He went and rebuilt the game.
Oh, wow.
So this was the end board after what we were playing. So the idea behind Blabrex is you may not play any legit English language words, nothing that's in the dictionary. Words instead have to be sent to an AI on the designer's page or Max's page, and the AI will tell you if the word is acceptable, and then it lists it, and then you also then have to define them as well. So, we had Dika, there you go, child that runs about excitedly. All makes sense. Dumbs, a minor curse word, that sort of thing. Code, to understand completely. And it was just brilliant. Like, it was a really, really completely fun new way of playing, a game that I really enjoy anyway. But it opened it up in a completely different way to a new audience. Like, so Xate does not like word games. But I think this was wonderful because it actually showed the power of Scrabble as an area control game. And I would be more than happy to actually play this again at some point on stream. It was great.
Could you combine that with the likes of bananagrams or hardback.
Yeah, of course you could. Yeah,
So as a kind of card-based version, or the more kind of free play of bananagrams.
yeah. I think any word game where it involves you creating something.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you use this AI and it was like, yeah, you can't do legit English words. What's also nice is one of the major issues with professional Scrabble are two-letter words.
Mm-hmm.
There's a set of like 45, 46 of them, I think. And if you know them, you're always going to be able to get yourself out of a problem and get yourself lots of extra points and doubles. The AI will not allow you to submit any two-letter words.
Yeah.
So you have to think about using more letters and coming up with more sort of like creative things. But yeah, I was absolutely blown away by it. Jorvit is probably my favorite, a Scandinavian knitted sweater, which is extremely itchy, because then there was the extended version of it, the Ada Jorvit, which was the child-size version.
All right. I do like the twinsy.
Twinsy, yes, double onesie. What do you expect?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I think we might be doing that again on the stream at some point in the near future, because it was great. You know, it shows how house rules can really, really change a game and really sort of like open them up to a completely different audience. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Ken likes word games and games about words, but they are not the same thing.
That is true.
That's very true.
So what else was I looking at? This is quite old, but it is from because after I picked it up secondhand on eBay, I got the. I was hoping the author. So note to anyone who's loading stuff on BGG, add your like username so you can get proper credit. So these are the Broodmine solo rules for Space Hulk. So now there are official rules with Deathwing and a campaign system, but the Broodmine solo rules for Space Hulk are really neat. They're really simple, but they're the closest thing I think to giving you the feel of the actual game. And again, it's that difference between soloing something and the difference between the solo rules trying to recreate the kind of multiplayer game. And with this, you play it so that the blips are face down. In Deathwing, I think the way they do it is that the when a blip appears, you immediately reveal it and you put that number of gene stealers on the board. So you always know what's coming at you.
Whereas this
the whole tension of it, is like I have no idea what's coming, and you know which ones do I try to take out first.
Yeah. Plus, Deathwing was like it was an independent expansion as well, wasn't it? So it was a completely different release, which would have cost more.
Yeah.
And this just lets you play solo with just the Space Hulk set.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You don't need anything else. That's part of it. And again, it's very simple. It's a one-pager, which I like when you're solo playing.
I think in our discussions, one thing that has become very clear is that it is the simple house rules that are the most effective, or simple sets of house rules. If you need to like expand it out to like a page, I mean, Space Hulk's a relatively, not like super complex game, but there's a lot going on. You've got to manage a fair bit, and especially if like a solo variant of it, there's going to be a fair bit of bookkeeping, I assume. But I think having that one sheet there is going to make your life a lot easier.
I think. Excuse me. It's my early start. I think with Space Hulk, actually, because of the nature of the Gene Stealers, who have like a sole focus, which is like kill the Space Marines, it actually makes it easier to do it. It's like, whilst working on solo rules for Test of Honor, where you're trying to catch the flavor of, well, they're not all going to be aggressive, so you need kind of different styles for the different characters, and then you also want to create the sense of them reacting to what's happening in the game, and that can get quite complex quite quickly. And I think that's one of the issues sometimes when people put too much into that rule set or that automata rule set, whereas we've always talked about like what's enough to give people the feel of it, so that you're still focused on the gameplay and not focused more on reading those rule variants. Because I always find if I'm spending more time looking at the rules variant, there's something wrong. They should never be bigger than the rule book for the actual game, and that can sometimes happen.
Yeah, I'm down with that. That is a good point, well put, as it were. It's all cool. Now, we would be remiss, of course, if we were not to mention our own homage to house rules, which I see behind your shoulder. There's probably another one in front of you because
there's like they're dotted around the house. there's two over there as well.
Tribbles everywhere. So yeah, Blank, which is very much a game that is designing your own house rules and making it the game that you want it to be. And I'm going to assume, Rory, that was like the appeal behind you actually signing it as well.
Yeah, I was actually completely when I was first given the pitch by Henri, I was kind of like, oh, this is just going to be a Cards Against Humanity. People are going to like put in the lowest common denominator, aspects into the game rules. And it was Pedro who was working with us at the time was like, no, like college students are going to love this. It's, this idea of customizing. And it wasn't until I took it home and played it with my 3 daughters. I kind of bribed them. I said, look, I'll take you for a kind of a hot chocolate and we'll play this game. And I saw their reaction to it, that I realized the power in the game. And that kind of, the more I did it then, the more I played it, the more I saw the potential. And when we would come into the studio in the morning and say, oh, I played it last night, I made up this rule. And someone else, it would just spark this conversation of, oh, you could make this rule off it and you could do this. And I thought it was that creative conversation that was happening, and the like, oh, I want to go back and play the game so I can make this new rule, was what really intrigued me about the game. And I think it's, in that sense, it's a sense of control and impact that especially younger players can have by customizing the game. Maybe it's an agency, maybe that's like a part of the house ruling thing, is actually encouraging people to kind of it's almost like in that 1984 movie where you step outside the line, like you don't just follow along with everybody else. You're like, no, I'm going to go over here, and the world isn't going to fall apart when you do it.
Yeah, I think that's good. I definitely think agency is a good descriptor for it. Putting control in the hands of the players is a very fun thing to do. And it was interesting seeing like some of the early reviews come through, especially like some of the BGG like comments of like, oh, all they've done is given us this unfinished game and they're expecting us to finish it for them. It's the fact that you do not understand what this game is, Karen. So maybe take a step back. And it was the people who really sort of like leaned into it and really got into like creating some incredible stuff, like basically like Blank the Euro game and stuff like that was always like really interesting to sort of see. But yeah, it did feel like the complete and natural evolution of a simple house rule just expanded out over the entire course of a whole game, which was awesome.
And so I think it's an interesting point about, like, again, the role and function of a game. And I'm kind of thinking about Blank and linking it to like Rory Story Cubes when I used to, and how we as a society deal with kind of rules and rule following. Because there's also the kind of cultural stereotypes that fall into that as well. And like with story cubes, people used to say all the time, like, what does this icon mean? And they were worried about playing the game wrong.
Mhm.
And the whole point was like, there was no wrong answer. As long as you can justify the association between what you're saying in the story and how you link it to the icon,
Mhm.
that is fine. That's kind of the point, and it's kind of how our brains work. These kind of, we make these weird leaps to connect things together to make sense of them. And it was really hard seeing people, and particularly teachers, who are like, yeah, but no, like, what's this actually mean? You know, I need to introduce this to my students, and they're going to ask me, and I need to know. And we'd have to be like, look, there isn't one right answer for this. But isn't there?
Rory, isn't there? Wasn't there a secret page where we actually defined?
But if you look at that secret page, you will see there's at least 4 suggestions for each icon.
That is true. That is very, very true.
So, because that's the point. So I think that has always stuck with me. And I think, again, blank is one of those things where you're giving people permission to step outside the lines and bend the rules to suit what they want in terms of the gameplay. And so that kind of comes to, I guess, a game where you've bought a game and are you allowed to change the rules or not? And, you know, what's your relationship to that thing? And does the designer really have a say on what you do with it once you've actually got your hands on it? So that's where I think I've become more a case. I've moved more to like, do what is going to bring you the most. I'm quoting Jason Perez here. You know, do what kind of brings you the most joy in how you interact with that thing, because you don't want it sitting on the shelf. So if there's something stopping you from taking it off the shelf, and it's a rule or something within the game, well, you know, have a go at changing it. And in that act of changing it, in that act of, like, I describe it as like in the act of creation of taking something from your mind and making it real and tangible. Like, for me, there's no bigger kind of kick than seeing that happen. Something being made tangible. And I think when you do it for the first time, it kind of like, it does become this thing where you're like, ooh, I did it on that. What other games in my collection could I start like get in and start like kind of tweaking and meddling, you know, those games that I haven't kind of interacted with before, because they felt like, I think there's sometimes a sense of there's a shield or like a pane of glass separating you from it meddling with the mechanics of the game, and really there's no reason why you can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of covered it a little bit earlier. We would always want somebody with our games to at least, you know, try it as we would like you to try it once. And then if you want to make changes to it, you go ahead, because you've been good enough to sort of like, you know, throw money our way to make, you know, to buy a copy of whatever. And if you want to, you know, if you want to sort of like make a change that is going to make the game hit your table more often and is going to make it a much more enjoyable experience for you, then hey, go for it. We ain't going to say no. If somebody sort of like goes, well, I am going to do like a game of Prismarina and I'm going to have 6 Prisma points and I'm going to have loads and loads and loads of powers, fair play to you. Me and Rory are not going to come in with sticks and start going, you're playing it wrong.
I will. Well, I think I would have tried to do it in a way that's thematically linked with the game. So, like with Holding On, we found some people were struggling with the difficulty within the game.
Yeah.
Which our argument was like, well, if we can beat it, others can beat it. But by including the rule that allows you to hold on to like the clear memories, thematically, I can justify that within the game. So I think that's, if I'm going to house rule something, it still needs to fit thematically with the intention of the game. I think sometimes, like, I've seen people give feedback on Untold, and there's another game we keep getting feedback on, and it's like kind of going, you don't get the point of the game. They're just making changes. It seems like they're making changes for changes' sake, and it's kind of like, I think you just need to go and make a new game that does that thing for you, because that's not the intent of what we've created. So I'm all for hacking it when you're kind of following the spirit of what the game is intended to be.
I am inclined to agree. Let's bump back to Blank for a second. Jay hadn't heard of Blank before.
Ooh. Will he do the pitch?
To check it out. It does sound fun with the right group. It is fun with the right group. We've had loads and loads of good stuff.
Even with the wrong group.
Even with the wrong group, it can be quite entertaining sometimes.
And so this one is actually got this set here is Blankdemic, because we teamed up with Matt Leacock, who's a big fan of Blank. And he designed a set of cards. Himself and his daughter Colleen designed a set of cards, and it's like a mini expansion that you would shuffle in, and now it becomes a pandemic themed card or game. So you get to riff off all of your kind of in jokes about pandemic as part of the essentially Uno style game.
I like that Matt essentially house ruled Blank because somebody annoyed him.
Yeah. So actually, it's weird. This is actually like the concept deck for Blank or for Blankdemic. It's not even. It hasn't even got his cards. It's got like the Google Sheet ones where I wrote them into the deck.
Yoss giving away copy to a colleague with 2 kids, so they're curious to see what the rules will end up being like. Another one has been given to a local pub, and I think that one is going to become a more adult version.
Yeah.
Yes, I assume so.
I still like there's 2 cards that always stick with me in Blank. One is the one my daughter created, which was if a player says yes or no in any language, they must draw a penalty card. Because there's this whole meta game that starts up around trying to get people to say yes or no. And it becomes hilarious when like people kind of trip over themselves and say it multiple times, triggering more penalties. And then when we were at PAX East, and it was all like, because it was video game themed, you came up with the card, which is the boss battle. So when that card came out, it just starts a mini game where you're trying to fight the boss. And you can now play cards instead of normally like in the game, you'd play them to the discard pile. You can now start playing them against the boss and trying to take them out. And then someone else drew a card which defended the boss. They created a new card that when it was revealed, it defended the boss, and you had to take them out before you could take out the boss as well. And I just loved how that was still going to like spill out. And the funny thing was, you could still win the game by getting into your cards, but people would get totally fixated on trying to take down the boss.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I've won. I've cleared my hand.
It was all cool. I mean, Yoss still has 9 copies of Blank to give away. So Yoss, send one over to Jay. That'll work. Then you'll be down at 8 and everything will be cool. And you'll feel like the most generous person in all of Europe. And it will be good time.
We'll truly be a hub community. Or community hub, I guess. I don't know.
That is true. All right. Anything else you want to cover? I think we pretty much got it right on that one, I think.
So, well, this was one I was kind of going, I should have covered it in the last game. So in Test of Honor, you have character cards that they're generic. So they represent like a different style of character. So I can have any figure associated with these. But if I want to play a character who kind of represents a battle-worn samurai, I would assign this card to them. Oh, no. Oh, man, this mirrored thing. Assign this card to them. No. Yeah, I was right the first time. Oh, man. Okay, and they're going to have a set of stats that kind of reflect a battle-worn samurai. And likewise, if I want to play with a devoted samurai. So they're both male characters. And I had kind of bought the figures from Bad Squiddo, which are the female Ona Bagisha and Ona Musha, which are like female warriors. And I kind of wanted cards that reflected them a little bit more. So I actually, Carmen Serra, who is active on the Test of Honor group, I contacted him and basically commissioned. So based on one of the actual figures, I adjusted the stats slightly. but change them to dutiful Onabugisha for that. But essentially, it's the same functionality. And then for Battle Worn, I have seasoned. And again, but they're linked to the actual figures I would be using.
Yeah.
Within the game, which is always kind of nice.
I mean, I'm gonna call out an official house rule. I think that's cool.
Yeah, they're actually. What was interesting is one of the companies has produced a Lone Wolf and Cub figure set, and so now the actual designer of the game has kind of asked the community, okay, what would their stats be? And it's been kind of really interesting watching the community kind of chime in for that.
Oh man, I was thinking about the Lone Wolf and Cub books.
Yeah.
Today.
So I think I'm gonna go back and start. But do you know how many pages are on it? It's 28 volumes.
Uh-huh.
I think it's 7,200 pages, and I don't know if it still does, but it held the record for the longest fight scene.
Oh, so, not the game books. You're talking about the book books.
Yeah, so the manga.
Yeah, I'm talking about the game books.
Oh,
that Joe Diva did.
Just Lone Wolf. Okay.
Yeah. That's pretty well though. The longest fight scene.
Yeah, it's 147 pages or something long.
So Xate says, yeah, letting the community chime in on game design is outrageous. Who would do that?
I know. It's shocking.
Well, hey, if I could expose people to this little thing here, why not join the Discord? Search for IdleCon and come and join in. It'll be fun, I promise. It'll be a thing, at least.
So, well, kind of speaking of that kind of community and game design, we didn't get to meet up today to discuss.
Well, there were reasons.
Yes, so I am actually self-isolating at the moment because of my daughter until we get the results in. So we weren't able to meet up face to face. But you have stuff. I have some stuff as well that I want to try and maybe chat to you about tomorrow before Friday. And see, because again, it's like I have the sense of it, and I'm just trying to figure out mechanically how we would make it work.
I mean, I have a nascent sort of scribbled spreadsheet that is, but yeah, I think if we have a talk tomorrow, we'll be able to pull something together, and then on Friday we could actually maybe look at building it. That would be pretty useful. Thank you for shamelessly putting the link in there. Saying shit, it's all good. So yeah, it's yeah.
So I'm curious, just within the chat again before we finish up, is there any game that you've been meaning to house rule something in it, or based on this conversation, you might be tempted to go back and house rule in some way?
I have been sat here for the last 6-7 weeks or whatever, and my copy of Fort has been sat right there and has not been played since you, Erin, and I played it at your house ages ago. And I would love to house rule a single player version for that. There has to be a way it's doable.
You might. I mean, that's the thing of kind of going, how much of the original game will you get to keep, but also using those cards, what's a fun single player experience to have using elements of the game, because I think that might be a better way to go. It is my sense. Like I have played, actually, I've been playing It's a Wonderful World solo. And they completely forgo the drafting, and which is kind of like the core of the game, but the way you do it, and it's like the only two things they really change in the game. So at the beginning of the game, you shuffle and you deal out 8 sets of cards, of 5 cards. So they're your 8 hands that you're going to get over the course of the game. And you just put them on the table and you pick up, at the beginning of a round, you pick up one of those sets and you play through it.
Mm-hmm.
Now the twist, and this is kind of an interesting one, is you can discard 2 cards from your hand to draw 5 and pick 1. So it's to help you really search for, like, you're paying a price. You're having to get rid of 2 cards to search for one really good, useful card that might help you in your combo. And so it's interesting because it's a nice trade-off of saying, well, it's hurting me because I'm paying 2, but there's a chance I'm going to get it. And there's a pretty good chance because there's 5 cards. But there's still times where I've done it and I'm like, oh crap, there's nothing in here that I wanted, and I've just thrown away 2 cards, and I could have used that other card to do something with it. And then the other thing is you get points for like majority if you have the highest production of a certain type, and they just change it to say if you produce 5 of that type of resource, you get the bonus.
You get the bonus then. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, they streamlined it down significantly then. That's pretty cool, actually.
But it still focuses you on the kind of comboing and the chaining of things together to get the points. You've just taken away the whole drafting element of it. But I guess that 5-card draw is a way of emulating that, just in a slightly different. It's not during the draft phase. It's after that, and you get to do it. And
you still get the feeling of, well, it's what you said earlier. It's like you still get the feeling of the game. It's just
well, I mean, because the game is ultimately like a solo. Like, you're building up your own area, and you don't really have any interaction with the other players. You're just trying to kind of outpace them, I guess, to score the points. Fort, I know, if I'm thinking correctly, has more interaction.
Yeah, the choosing the kid cards and all that sort of stuff. Oh, apparently there's some solo rules on BGG for Fort, according to Yoss. I will go investigate.
Well, I think your homework is to go and investigate that and improve on them. And I'm going to just
some kind of professional games designer.
And I will play 4 against Darkness and just report back.
Sounds like a good plan. Cool. All right, we are going to wrap it up there then. Remember that we will be back on Friday, 2:00 UK time, on this self-same channel as we dive that little bit deeper into the wonderful world of Holding On 2. I will be back tomorrow. We're going to be doing a little bit of Lunar Llama Farmers. Alex has just arrived.
Yeah. Hello. Goodbye.
Bye. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a Lunar Llama Farmers tomorrow on the Arnold Michael channel, and we're going to be playing Delve as well, like I said, on Friday night, and it will be excitement aplenty.
What do you want to do for next Wednesday? So we're it's the eve of Christmas Eve. Do you want to? Well, I'll ask again the audience. Do you want to see us here next week? Will we chat? Will we play something as well?
Play Blabrex against the chat again.
Something silly.
Blabrex was pretty silly. It's got to be said. I don't know. We can set something up. I think playing something, because it could be like the last day of term. It's toy day. We get to bring our toys and play something.
Exactly. Something silly. Okay. We'll have a think about that.
Yeah, we'll figure out something. But yeah, we'll play something with chat, and that will be cool. We'll organize.
I was trying to think of doing our our hand over thing. Trying to play like Super Rhino. Where you have like a fake hand coming in trying to move something.
No dexterity games. No dexterity games going to be played. Like there's silly and there's horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes. But yeah, so we'll be back, of course. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It is much appreciated as always. If you want to follow us, you know where you can do that. You just hit up all of those fine social media networks, and it's at We Are Hub Games across the board. And that's about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go eat a sausage roll.
I'm going to go get myself a cup of tea and a biscuit.
Make it happen. All right, y'all. Thank you very much for joining us. We will see you again either tomorrow or Friday. For now, though, this is where we wave. Goodbye, my friends. Goodbye. We love you all dearly. Fair.